us here inside the stadium studios. We are talking baseball. Who better to talk it with than our manager, John Farrell, our player, Trevor Plouffe, and our GM, Steve Phillips. And gentlemen, it's something I'm sure you've all been affected by in some way, shape, or form. John, I'll start off with you as a manager. When you hear the term tanking in Major League Baseball, we've seen some teams do it successfully, others not so much. Is it a good thing for baseball to try to actually execute this plan?
You know, I believe overall it's a bad plan because it's incentivizing losing. You know, this year we're going to have 4 teams at the big league level lose over 100 games with a strategy to try to better themselves through the draft. But as a manager sitting in that seat, how you're going to be evaluated is so important for your relationship with the general manager. You become the spokesperson on a daily basis to your fan base. So there's got to be some understanding of what you're planning to do as an organization and what is the plan going forward to get you back to a winning scenario, a winning environment that your fans can rally around. Right now, you know, the TV contract doesn't correlate or pays teams to not win. So your profitability is not connected to how many games you win. So to me, there's a fundamental problem with the overall approach.
Steve, if you hear this as a GM and it comes down from high, how do you deal with that as an executive and translate that to your team?
Well, I think tanking has such a negative connotation to it because it means purposefully losing, and that's not what rebuilding is. Rebuilding is sort of taking it apart because it's easier to build a winning team from the ground up than trying to figure it out when you're stuck in the middle, when you've got bad contracts, you've got players in different directions, you don't have the depth of a farm system. So the idea of rebuilding isn't trying to lose, it's trying to find the quickest pathway back to winning. And so trading away veteran players, getting back prospects, rebuilding your farm system, yes, there is an effect of when you do lose, you get better draft picks that helps that process come back. But the idea is turn it around in 3 or 4 years and then sustain a level of success for the long term. From an ownership perspective, you don't rebuild to try to make money. You rebuild to try to win. Yes, you may make some money during the process because you're bringing in money that you're not spending. But ultimately, it is the best way to put your franchise back on the path to winning when you're stuck in the middle.
And Trevor, obviously you played in a smaller market there in Minnesota. What is that feeling like? As a player, obviously, you're never trying to lose. You're always trying to do your best. But can you feel that if you almost feel like, well, we know that we're not supposed to be good, therefore maybe it's okay to lose?
No, you never want to lose as a player. I promise you that. And I was on some pretty tough teams there in Minnesota, but they were never tanking teams. You know, we went into the season every year with optimism, trying to win the division, trying to get our foot into the playoffs. It just happened that we lost 100 games a few years. You know, whether that be injuries, players not performing at the highest level, stuff like that. But there was never a time where we were tanking. And I'm just obviously not a fan of it as a player. I think there needs to be competitiveness throughout the entire league, and I think when that doesn't happen, it's bad for baseball. I was part of the collective bargaining committee that ratified this new CBA that we're in right now, and let me tell you, the owners had the upper hand in that. You know, I don't know all the legal talk, the business speak. I don't know how to do all that. I was trying to come from a player's perspective there. You know, there was a large group of us, and what happened in that CBA is a little bit of sleight of hand by MLB. You know, at that point they were talking about the international draft and the qualifying offer. That was their sleight of hand. That was their divide and conquer strategy. It got guys talking. It got the Americans and the Canadians pitted against the Latin guys because the Latin guys aren't subjected to a draft. And obviously the Latin guys wanted to keep it that way because you're able to maximize your money right away. All the while knowing that if they were able to keep that tax threshold down, it was essentially a small salary cap, and it's worked that way ever since. And I think that's really the reason why we're in the situation that we're in today.
Hey, gentlemen, feel free to jump in. Steve, I'll start with you here. Interesting words there from Trevor. When you do see, though, the success, if you will, in air quotes, obviously the Stros and of the Cubs, of kind of the thought was that they tanked to get, and as you said, to win quicker. What about other teams using that formula because they've seen the success of those other clubs I mentioned?
Oh, there's no question. It's a copycat league, right? So you see what has led to other teams' success. You're like, well, let's do that. And so we saw the Astros lose 100 games 3 years in a row, and now they've won 100 games 3 years in a row. We saw the Cubs take it apart and go through some really tough seasons. We saw the Royals go through a long rebuilding process. Then Moustakas and Kane and Hosmer got there, and they put together the pitching staff. And so we've seen a lot of these teams go through this process that it's proven to win. It's proven to get you to that point. So now we see the Padres go through it, the White Sox going through it. You would see some other Baltimore, Detroit starting to go through it with the idea of trying to get themselves back to winning more quickly. And the way to do it is to rebuild your farm system by trading assets. Now, to John's point earlier, there has to be an understanding about what the expectations are from ownership to the general manager, from the general manager to the manager, because if the expectations aren't appropriate, then it's never going to end out being fair or in a good result for the actual manager of the team on the field.
John, do you concur?
Yeah, totally. And I think that, as we've said here, there's got to be an understanding of the situation that a organization is currently in. But when you look at the league as a whole right now, you've got the evolution of super teams, and other teams have no chance to compete against those clubs. Teams assemble for spring training middle of February. You can tell already there's going to be 6 teams that'll have a chance to go into October, and really there's going to be 24 other teams that, of those 24, you may have another 4 that have a legitimate chance. It's almost like the season is predetermined based on the system that's currently in place.
And Trevor, I'll give you the last word here. Do you get that feeling? And I know, again, you don't want to go into a spring training going, we have no chance to win. But is John right on that? That you do get the sense that there's only a certain number of teams that can win because of, quote unquote, tanking in baseball?
Absolutely. You know, I was in spring training this year, and I think I've spoken about this previously on this channel. Walking into Sarasota to play the Orioles, you know, I was with the Phillies, and I told some guys on our team, I said, I can't imagine what it's like to be on that side of the fence. I said, we're here in Philadelphia trying to win a World Series. Those guys know they're going to lose 100 games. That's a bad feeling. You know, it's great. Some of those guys are going to be in the big leagues when they probably shouldn't be, and that's good for them. But quickly that'll turn around, and they'll realize that being in the big leagues, losing 100 games is just not fun. And you can see it. They've had some disruptions in the dugout this year, some stuff within the clubhouse. It's just not fun to show up to the ballpark. Yes, you're in the big leagues. Yes, you're making some money. You've reached your dream of playing in the big leagues, but really what you want to do is win in the big leagues.
It's an interesting dynamic from 3 different perspectives. John Farrell, Trevor Plouffe, Steve Phillips, appreciate the time. We could talk baseball all day. We're going to stop it down right now. We appreciate it, gentlemen. We'll catch up again soon.